Welcome to another conversation with HPQ, where we take the time to talk with the CEO after they've put out an important press release. We are once again joined by CEO Bernard Tourillon. Mr. Tourillon, thanks for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Let's talk about this June 22nd press release. The title is a very impressive title, and I'm just going to read it. It says HPQ Silicon strengthens its balance sheet and solidifies its position as an innovative manufacturer of silicon materials for lithium-ion batteries. Now, just jumping straight into it. First of all, the press release opens with another very bold statement. I know you guys don't do this often, but this statement is really important to read. It says an increase of more than 4.4 million in the company's equity through a series of transactions with Investissement Quebec. First of all, what is Investissement Quebec? And for our English-speaking viewers, it's actually pronounced Investissement Quebec. So I know if you try to pronounce it normally, it might be, but you know, what is this organization and what is the nature of HPQ's relationship with the organization?
Okay. We call it IQ for short, IQ, Investissement Quebec. So we went for the shortened acronym of it. Investissement Quebec is a state-run bank. Basically merchant bank investors, strategic investors in those things. And they fundamentally have two divisions. Okay. One of them is like a commercial type of bank where Quebec companies can go, or any companies, more specifically designed to help projects that are done in Quebec. Okay. But you can go to Investissement Quebec as a bank to get financing, to get, business services. You deal with Investissement Quebec. And Investissement Quebec also has another hat that they wear, which is where they act as the banker of the Quebec government. What that means is if a loan or a financial transaction, when it is presented, when the risk level is too high for a commercial institution to take in, has too many overall strategic risk, and Investissement Quebec, with their own capital as a lending institution, don't want to do that loan, and then there's an alternative way of going through it, where you deal with the government through their ministry, and then they have different types of programs to which they finance specific projects that could have interest to what they did. So the project we did at that time, 2018. We was done through a program of the Quebec government, which was called Creativité Québec. What that program did was it financed advanced R&D toward the last stage to commercial production.
Okay.
You have to go through all these rhythms. So what happens is Investissement, they use their own equity. All right. They basically have about the same barums of analysis as regarding risk reward as a typical institution. But when it's the government that takes it, they have different criteria to look at it. Is an investment strategically important for Quebec? Even it's high risk. I know through the discussion I had with them that we were considered in 2018 extremely high risk. So we were more seen as a forgettable loan that they were doing. They took a bet on HPQ and on the technology and pyrogenesis. And now, since we were so much forward thinking, if we move now to 2021, the overall structure that we presented to the Quebec government, we've proven to be right in the right direction, but the market dynamics have completely changed, where it positions ourselves in a much better situation. So what the government then decided to do, because we have been ongoing discussion, is okay, we'll now become a shareholder of the company like everybody else. So we remove all the covenant and all the limiting factor and let HPQ basically grow. So it was basically it was a government. It wasn't a grant, and under the term of the grant. But I even understood that the way the program was done, they wrote off their investment in the year. It was considered a grant given away. They didn't think they would make money with it. I always thought to the contrary, and I wanted to prove them wrong, but still, let's be realistic. It was 2018. The market was rough. We got the financing at 12. We knew we were in the right direction,
Yeah.
but not too many people believed us. The market didn't believe us at that time, and it took them a lot of time to realize where we are right now. So Investissement Quebec is one of those great little tools that can be done where the government can use its capacity to borrow at zero, right?
Mm-hmm.
Almost zero at that time, and lend it back to company. And we got what I think was considered one of the best deals out there. It was a convertible debenture, 5% interest, and it was an unsecured convertible debenture.
Well, either
Right?
you got a good deal or you guys are sales titans. Um,
I don't. We gotta. We fit. Listen. Often in life, it's a question of timing. Are you able to deal with life throws at you? And it worked, but it took me what I started those discussions in 2016.
wow.
Took us all the way to 2018, and we got the closing, and I think we got the preliminary approval in end of 2017, and it took us till end of 2018 to get all the ducks in order because they put a lot of conditions to it.
Yeah.
So it isn't as easy as stepping through the process. There was a lot of technical due diligence that they
Of
made us
course.
do. Like one of the questions that was there is, okay, we're because the program wasn't designed for small cap companies like us, especially not small cap companies listed on a public exchange. It really
Yeah.
wasn't. It was basically designed to finance big companies' project. But we figured a way working with them to make it work. So one of the big questions they had says, wait a minute, you can't do this project and come back to us. It says we're going to need more money for more R&D
Yeah.
of that specific machine. And we convinced them, and the selling argument at that time was the solar business, where we were looking at going into the solar industry.
Yeah.
But we were so avant-garde and so much advantage that even the difficulties of the solar industry didn't stop us. Actually made us move more forward.
And just so people understand, it's when we talk about the government or the state, this is the Quebec government, which is in Quebec, which is a Canadian province.
Yes.
So there are two more points that I want us to mention because there are two other bold points made in the press release. The first one is it says an increase of 2,335,000 in the company's liquidity through the exercise of 15 million warrants. And the second point is a reduction of 2,076,984 in the company's debt through the early conversion of a 1.8 million convertible debenture and the payment in shares of 276,984 of accrued interest related to the debenture. Now, to me, that's just numbers flying in the air and things being said. So, I'm not I'm not a stockbroker. I'm not, that good at, stock market or venture exchange, yada, yada, yada. But so for a novice like myself, make these two sentences make sense. What are we talking about here?
And Derek, don't feel bad. It's a question of financial literacy, and it's not. You have a great literacy on many things because I know you very well, and it's a question of financial literacy and accounting. And when you start talking accounting, sometimes just put your head on the side and forget. Stop.
Well, that's why we have accountants, right?
Yeah. Well, like they come up with rules that don't make any sense. So like, don't get me started. The reason I don't get stressed with audited financial statement is. The beauty of a TSX venture company is in our note 1 says, if we don't raise money, we won't live. But that's a known factor. Like we're not making revenues. We are, we're non-revenues companies developing either mining project technologies. It's a given. So, I was once told I was on a board of another company, and I was once dealing with, probably one of the very wealthy individual from South Africa at that time. And he told me, he says, Bernard, every junior listed company, every mining companies, even if they have $100 million of bank account, they're always theoretically going to be bankrupt. And I'm not saying this negatively, just a reality of that. No matter how much money, it depends how smart the management is and how well it develops what it says it's going to do. So the key point is That's a financial literacy course 101, okay, about this. Then we have different segment of of where we plug in an amount. So
Yeah.
government money came into it, even though it's a convertible debenture, it was put as a debt on the book. Sort of a complicated debt because you have to make calculations that go through, like it's doesn't make any sense. But in the deal we negotiated with the government, if they decided to convert, they had the right to, we no, in the deal, we had the right not to pay the debt, the interest, which was a very big advantage. Okay. So we could accrue that amount. As a counterpoint to this, the government had the right, if they decided to convert those that due into shares of HPQ as per the rules of the TSX, getting the rebate of the TSX. So, because all the terms are negotiated, okay. I'll take 2 seconds to do a quick apartheid here on the subject, or parenthesis. I don't know if it's a better word. Or parenthesis is the fact that somebody owns 10% of the company doesn't change anything in regard to board membership. In the case of EQ, that would have been negotiated at the beginning.
Yeah.
As I told you, this is one of those situations where EQ True and the government acted as merchant banker and took a risk.
Okay.
Complete risk. So, they unsecured convertible debenture. We didn't have to pay the interest because on other deals, you have to pay the interest every quarter. That could become risky and structure and make the situation difficult. So in the accounting term, it was plugged in as a debt in our book. Okay.
Okay. So
when they convert, that goes from the debt part of the, because you have assets, you have liabilities, and you have shareholder capital. That's the three things of supposedly of accounting. Then accounting's come up with derivative things or whatever, but that's fundamentally what it is. So it goes from the debt part to the shareholder equity part because it's now converted. Because we issue shares and the debt document disappeared. And what was left over in the still debt, because it was an account payables in our book, basically that's converted into shares, that eliminates. So that's why we say we increase our shareholder equity, which is the truth. And by that, plus the cash came in, so the warrants basically are converted to shares. So basically it's one warrants, or whatever, plus X amount of money equals one shares. And that's how it works. And then they disappear. They're no longer in our warrants count, and they're basically, we have the cash in the bank. So we get the cash in the bank and sort of a clean up our balance sheet. The end result of all of this, HPQ is debt free. We don't have any covenants, so we can speed up our development. That was one of the arguments with the government to change this. And they are just regular shareholders. Well, regular shareholders, 10% shareholders, but they're also part of the entire
process,
basically HPQ family now.
So
as opposed to wanted to be on the outside, once they became shareholders, they became part of the family. They were just on the fence.
Yeah, well, HPQ is been a very better position today than it was before, right? So now this other statement, it says, if the exchange approves the conversion of the interest in common shares, IQ, Investissement Quebec, would hold just over 10%, which is what you've already explained here. Now, how significant is this, though? Like, that to have a government entity own shares, is this just, again, for the naysayers, is this further validation of HPQ? Would you say that?
Yeah, it's
just a financial situation that is a financial thing that made sense.
Well, first of all, it's a financial situation that makes sense. In 2018, when they came in, it made sense to us. It allowed us to advance the project. It allows us to be where we are now with multiple different projects, multiple different entities. It's a validation because, as weird as it is, in Canada, okay, if you don't own 10%, you don't appear onto the list of shareholders. I get this question from brokers. I do speak to a few brokers that still have interest in junior companies. And I say, who are your shareholders? And they go look on their computer system, okay, and they don't see, because Pyro is below 10%. It's in a fully diluted, it's above 10%. The shareholder's not there, so it's not a reporting issue. It's not a reporting owner. So Investissement is going to be above 10%. And it was just a question of the fluke of the maths of it, all right? In the sense that when you add the shares from the conversion, and the shares from the warrants exercise, they were at 9.991%. Okay.
Yeah.
When you add the shares from the interest, they go above 10%. It's just one of those, like, it's one of those statistic flaws. There's no significance. Like, how can I say it's a no-brainer. We've done these shares for debt on tons of regular things. We know it's going to be approved because we respect all. It's basically a paint by the numbers. We paint all the right numbers. It's going to go through. But you're dealing with a government entity. So when we wrote the press release, we can't say they have 10% until they have it. So just a question of in between. But, very, very soon, I don't know, in a week and a half, there's going to be a bulletin come out on CDAR that says the TSX has approved, and TSX Venture has approved the transaction. We send them the balance of the share. Lo and behold, they're officially over 10%.
Oh, okay. So you've already made the point that your relationship with IQ started a while back when you guys were actually solar was the initial plan for HPQ, the initial focus.
Green solar was the initial plan. We were really forward thinking.
Yeah.
Really.
So I just like to know, how have they perceived HPQ's transition since then? Because now you have multiple avenues. You have a few subsidiaries you're planning. There's like it's almost like having a pipe hose here. There's a lot of things that it can be done with the silicon that's going to be produced here. So how have they taken that? How have they received this transition over the years?
I would actually think that it's now easier for them to understand. Like for every investors, when we were in the solar business, it was too complicated because we would talk to investors and tell them silicon is a key ingredients to make solar panel. And that just would be like, oh, it's too complicated. There's too many steps. Somehow batteries, electric cars, people understand. Oh, okay. I need silicon to get my car to go further and charge faster. That's all what I want. So it's completely a question of perception. Overall, in the energy business, the solar silicon is a much more important. Overall, the green aspect of it. We were cutting down greenhouse emission by 97%, if I remember correctly. The numbers were astronomical.
Huge.
You don't realize, to do 1 kilogram of solar grade silicon metal in China, I'm going from memory because I haven't looked at the numbers in a few years, but at that time they were producing 140 kilograms of CO2. So, and we were going to produce maybe 6, 7 to do it.
Wow.
So, but that didn't resonate. Solar, how can I say this? Solar didn't resonate as much as how big solar is. The relationship silicon to solar just didn't resonate with investors. It really didn't. Which is sort of funny now that we've advanced, everything that we've done, we're developing, moving forward. Now it's going to start to resonate on the same argument which we were making 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So, heck, it's a beautiful thing.
Now, China, you mentioned China with CO2, but there's a story actually, the Reuters spoke about it, New York Times, The Hill, Politico, everybody's been talking about it. Even PV Buzz had a story about it yesterday, actually. So that, there were, the US government banned exports for some companies that either manufacture or deal with industrial polysilicon. As we know, it's important in the manufacturing of solar panels. Now, this is just a question for you. In the grammar scheme of things, what do you think of a news like this? I mean, understanding again that HPQ holds the key that may one day lead to the manufacturing of industrial polysilicon materials in North America. What do you make of such a story?
In a certain way, it's finally bringing some coherence to the green tech side of the business. There was really an unfair competition when end buyers just cared about the price of their solar watt, and it didn't really care if the pollution was there and done somewhere else. Okay, and the Chinese took complete advantage of that to basically played us off our greed. Okay, everybody wanted cheap solar, green solar technology. That's the concept. Not looking at all the steps that are required into it. And, the Europeans were started to think a few years ago about, wait a minute. You got to take a look at the entire
ESG, the entire ESG process.
Everything else. But, and I remember I had discussions with investors 3, 4, 5 years ago. I was telling them it's going to go ESG, and they were looking. It's like, you're nuts. Well, now I'm sort of right. As a junior companies like HPQ is, junior growing new technology, we have to balance the two. Okay. But we have an incredibly, although we don't, go out formally talk about it, but we are a perfect ESG model. We were competing against, we were telling the world that you can basically have the same product that's going to have a much better footprint. Now the fun part is a big term. Now that bankers have woken up to that concept, it's going to completely change the dynamic. So the politicians are talking about it, but the bankers, the financiers have put a word into it. When you see people that are against carbon emission joining the board of Exxon, okay, not that the management of Exxon wanted them, but that's how it occurred.
Process, yeah.
You suddenly realize that there was a fundamental change. Okay, we changed over. Okay, there's a change. So it's great for us because we didn't scrap what we did. Okay. We're ready. We're already ready to go back and pounce back into this. If you would have told me a year ago that solar would be back in, I wouldn't be there. The price, just in the concept of greedy price, the price has gotten down to $8. Everybody in the industry knew it was infeasible. Okay, in 2015. The all-in cost of the Chinese plants were about $15 to $16 a kilogram. That's even before, and they were selling it at $8.6 because it's China. They can do these things. But now it doesn't work, and now the image is changing. That becomes more important. So the conclusion is, that for HPQ, it is another multi-billion-dollar venue that we can look at and have a solution for people looking at it. Now I know people are going to ask me about, silicon for electronics, but that requires a higher level. That would require us to, basically be very creative, figure a way to going all the way to 11N. But we know how to go to a solar quality material. We had the pathways, we had the ideas. And now since we're a much stronger company with much more than one project, it's actually becoming more feasible for us to do this. Plus, the great news is when the QRR are operational, we will now have the proof of concept.
Yeah.
Okay. If we can produce what we said we could produce, which is a low boron 4 to 5N Si, we're going to be well positioned. Now, the reason why I stopped worrying too much about the purity of the material was that 2N plus for batteries is more than acceptable. But when we go back to solar, we go back to those things. So, but that's not going to be that complicated. I may dare to say this. It might just be a few turn of the knob for us to get the purity higher. Inside joke here.
Well, Mr. Tourillon, it's always been great to have you, and thank you for explaining this, for giving me the first grade level accounting stuff on on trading. And thanks for taking the time, and catch you on the next one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.